Hello, friends. I'm Britt.
And I'm Hannah.
And we totally forgot to mention something super fun and important about this very first episode. So we wanted to interject and have like a little meep moment right here at the beginning where we acknowledge and dive into spring equinox. We didn't even touch on it, on what a beautiful part of the year, brand new, super powerful, fresh start. And I just wanted to ask Hannah to open up about this and set us up right for this episode.
Yeah, so it's spring equinox today. So happy spring. This is officially the beginning of spring. We see the flowers blooming, we see everything is sprouting, and this is why we really chose this day to bring out our first episode. But funny enough, we forgot to mention anything about it throughout the whole episode. So what is spring equinox? If you don't know, it is the day when day and night are the same length, and the same time, the same thing happens at vernal equinox, autumn equinox, when Libra season starts, when the day is again the same as the night and the same length as the night. And so we have this beautiful balance between the day and the night, the masculine and the feminine. And now is the time for us to go into this lighter season in life, which is the more masculine, the more active, outgoing, extroverted, the creative part of this year. And this is really exciting, and we're going to be talking more about the masculine and feminine energies in upcoming episodes, but we just wanted to add that this is a really good time to start new things. So if you've been feeling, I really want to start this project, now is the time to do so.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So here we are, spring equinox 2019. Let's see what it holds for us, and we hope that you really enjoy this brand new first episode of the podcast. Be sure to share it with your friends. If you love it, we encourage you and invite you to subscribe so that you get a little notification every 2 weeks when a brand new episode is uploaded.
And enjoy the episode.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Oh, sacred sister, a kindred flame, may we light one another. From the ashes rise, oh, we rise, oh, again.
Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Sister Podcast. Come and join us as we gather to normalize the magic
And sacralize the mundane. Hi, my name is Britt Lynn.
And I'm Hannah.
And we are so excited to dive into the official first episode of this brand new sisterhood concept. What are we going to be talking about today?
We're going to be talking about spirituality. What is a spiritual person? What are the misconceptions about spiritual people? And what is really the definition of spirituality?
Yeah, we're laying the baseline foundations, and we were setting up for this episode and kind of going over what it is that we want to talk about and have as our themes and our topics. And it's really very interesting how it is a combination of the masculine and the feminine even here, because there are these universal truths that apply to each and every one of us, whether or not we want to regard them as real or not. And also there are our individual perceptions that we can pick up in a variety and a myriad of ways. Things that are taught to us, the things that are shown as examples to us throughout our life, are just kind of daily, everyday experiences. And we're going to kind of touch on a lot of that today.
Yes.
So what those individual things give to us is our basic perception and our perspective on what we consider to be a spiritual person, because each and every one of us has our own unique perspective and reality, and it makes it so much easier to understand that there's no right or wrong or good or bad whenever you're able to see just how wide the spectrum of belief is, right?
Yes. And then even when we talk about the definition of spirituality and how really simple it is, And what is the definition of being spiritual, or just spiritual, the word spiritual? And it's really just the non-physical. It's relating to the human soul, the human spirit. It's everything that is non-physical. And that in itself is just such a simple concept, because when you think about quantum physics and you look into what are we made of, what are the atoms in our body made of, and it's 99.9999999% space. It is non-physical. Most of us is non-physical. And so the tiny, 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 tiny part that is matter, that is considered matter, is so, so small. And that's the part that we tend to focus on. But as a spiritual person, or for me, that is the definition of being a spiritual person, is to focus on that other part that we all are, that non-physical part within ourselves.
Yeah, and in my, like, the way that I consider what is a spiritual person, what is spirituality, it's just the basic idea of being a person that's interested to ask myself the really big questions about life and believe that life has a way deeper meaning and that every single aspect of my life has a meaning, has a purpose, and really getting curious about expanding upon what that means for me, what that means as like this one individual living in a super, super complex, way vast world, and how I can make myself a better person in order to leave this world better than I found it.
Yes.
Whenever I do depart from this world. So what we're going to be also addressing today is a few common misconceptions about what is spirituality or what is a spiritual person. We're going to leave little timestamps if you only want to tune into specific questions, specific explanations. So the timestamps are going to be found down below, but the questions that we're going to be answering today, not the questions we're going to be answering today, the topics, the misconceptions that we're going to be addressing today are these 4. If you're spiritual, you're always happy. If you're spiritual, you can't enjoy money. If you're spiritual, you have to practice yoga. If you're spiritual, you're also religious. We are so excited to dive into these today, and I just would like to invite each and every one of you who are listening to this, whether you are at your home, at your office, in your car, I'd like to drop into a short grounding meditation just to all of us arrive in the same space, to open ourselves up to have this conversation. So for those of you that are able to plant yourself firmly or arrive in a comfortable seated position, and if you are in a car, definitely don't close your eyes. But see if you can relax yourself into your seat, and we're just going to have a few moments of focused breath and focused attention before we start this episode today. So if you have found yourself seated in an upright posture, I invite you to, on your next inhale, wherever you are in your breath cycle is fine. On your next inhale, go ahead and start to gather the shoulders up at the ears, scrunching upwards. And as you exhale, begin to turn those shoulder blades and allow them to drop down the back. 2 more times. Big inhale, filling up the chest. Exhaling, spinning shoulders. Let them cascade. Imagine them as waterfalls cascading down the back. And for these next few breath cycles, I invite you to, on your exhales, open the lips and audibly release whatever is stored inside of you. especially if this is something that feels odd or foreign to you. I really encourage you to press into it. A lot of times we can store our emotions, our tensions, our fears inside of our body, and it can just feel so relaxing to let it go and release it on the breath 2 more times. Even relaxing the jaw, allowing the tongue to drop down, or even to release outside of the mouth. Last breath. Slight rolling of the head from side to side. Even waggling the jaw, releasing the tongue outside of the mouth. And just for a few breath cycles, come into full awareness of where you're at today. Every single day, we have different behaviors, different subconscious thoughts, different interactions with people, different things that are circulating in our reality that are very, very real. And nothing is good and nothing is bad necessarily. Just coming into the full awareness of where you're at on this day, in this season of your life. And seeing if you can really make peace with that. It is a given that we are to experience challenge in this life. What sort of growth would we be able to experience if life was sunshine and rainbows all the time? The hard periods really show us how strong we are internally. And oftentimes, I know for myself at least, it is in the darkest of times where I'm able to really dive deep into my internal being, to really see who I am inside. That I'm able to make peace with and rejoice in this unique individual that I am, and then find ways to transmute that darkness and offer it as medicine to others. Each and every one of us has this gift. And especially if dark periods of time in your life are uncomfortable and unpleasant as they are for most of us, I really encourage you to approach those areas with the most loving of eyes, and to understand that it does not make you less than, to understand that it does not make you broken, to understand that you are perfect, perfectly imperfect in every little piece of your being. What is perfection anyway? It's not real. It cannot be found in the natural world. Symmetry is not an aspect of nature that our cosmos embodies. Life is messy, and that's okay. I invite you to lengthen your next inhale. Coming back into your body. And giving your toes and maybe even rubbing the pad of your thumb over the fingertips. Bringing that slight activation, slight stimulation, and whenever you're ready, opening the eyes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brittany, for guiding us through this. That was wonderful. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
And I love how you really focused on the breath and the breath cycles, because this is something that really that we actually just found out right before this episode, because I just love word origins. I love to look up what is the origin of the word, what is the root of the word. And so I looked up what is the root of the word spiritual, and it comes from the Latin word spiritus, which means breath. So it's all about the breath, and how perfect is it too, because we're breathing on a constant basis. And how often do you really focus on your breathing?
like actively, consciously saying, okay, body, go ahead and inhale. I was telling Hannah when she mentioned that etymology, the root, the base of where spiritual came from. I was at a workshop one time, and my teacher was telling a story of when she was speaking with a student, and the student was saying about, you know, how they are the breather, and they are in control of the breath, which, yes, it's true. Whenever we consciously are able to focus our thoughts, we can be in control of our breath. But the teacher looked at the student and said, wow, what an interesting ego tie that you have to think that you are the breather and that you are not instead being breathed. Which is a very interesting concept, because our body is such an intelligent system that we don't even have to focus on breathing every single time, because we would not be able to live.
Yeah.
Because we need to sleep and totally relax the mind. But somehow this intelligent system, infinitely intelligent system, with all the cells and all the organs and everything, all the systems that are inside of us, we are not conscious of all that they are doing for us in every moment of the day.
Yes, and when you really think about it, the conscious acts that we have throughout the day is just 12%. You know, in hypnosis that what we're learning, it's just 12% in conscious, and 88% is in the subconscious. So 88% of the behaviors and things that we do is completely in the subconscious realm. It is all within us. So we can focus on love and light, we can focus on positive affirmation, we can focus on having all these intentions. That's in the end, it's just 12% of the consciousness that we put into it. And then 88% depends on what are our inner patterns, our belief systems, our blocks.
The programs that we've taken in since we were infants, and even in utero.
And even in past lives, if we go back there, or even in multiple lives, whatever your belief system is, or through ancestors, through the DNA, the genetic system. Like we are having so many programs within ourselves, and like a computer, we are installing programs throughout our lives, and then it's also time to deinstall some of those at times as well.
Yeah, that's the most wonderful way to look at it. And I think in this about 3.5 years that I've been really, really tirelessly devoting myself to expansion, is looking at myself like this really great, fantastic computer system, because you're able to really scope out and gain clarity on when you started picking certain things up and where they came from and why you've been carrying them and the ways that they've served you and the ways that they haven't.
Yes.
And when you gain awareness on all of the aspects of your being that are no longer serving you, I think sometimes we can talk about those ideas a lot, and they kind of lose their their punch, like whenever we speak of them so often. But really, whenever you actually gain clarity and you say, okay, this is exactly what it is, these are the reasons that it's no longer serving me, and I'm really, really ready to shed this program. And sometimes we set intention to shed a program, and we're not really ready to yet, because there's a lot more that we have to learn from it.
Yeah.
How many times has that happened?
Yeah.
So these are some more aspects that we're going to be going into, and I think we can start addressing those misconceptions now.
Yes. So the first misconception that we were thinking about mentioning is, if you're spiritual, you're always happy. And we talked about it before a little bit. The conscious part of really focusing just on love and light. There's a lot of, I feel like in the community, there is a part of the spiritual community that is really just focusing, or trying to just focus on the love and light, which is, it's not bad in itself, but at the same time, as soon as we just focus on one side, we deny the other one. And as soon as we deny something, it's not going to be happy. I feel like
it's out of balance.
It's out of balance, yes. And I actually had this download yesterday. There's this little saying, the Native Americans saying, you have two wolves inside of you. One white wolf, one black wolf, and it's up to you which one you feed. And it's a lot about, you feed the good wolf, and then you let the bad wolf starve. But what I realized yesterday in the meditation is like, who would do that, really? Like, if I have two wolves, I'm going to feed them both. Like, I'm going to make sure that both are happy, because even if I starve one of them, I know for sure that one's going to be angry at me, and that one's going to be the one that's going to fight me and it's going to try to get me. So you really need to be aware of, if we just focus on the love and light, our shadows grow stronger. And we all have shadows. We all do. And those are fun things about ourselves. And in those shadows, we can discover amazing treasures and hidden gifts within ourselves, in those depths of the shadows. And so we don't want to ignore them.
Yeah, they can be really uncomfortable to look at whenever you first start gaining awareness as to like, oh, yes, on the one hand, I am this perfect being, but also there are a lot of things that don't feel good. Like, either maybe they get mentioned in my body, my being gets tight. I find myself really stressed. A really great way to discover blockages inside of yourself are like looking at the ways that your being is feeling. if I've developed twitches, I've developed just certain behaviors in my body that are totally unconscious whenever certain stresses or certain fears are coming up, and it can really, really impact us in, literally limitless ways.
And it can even cause illnesses and disease. And that's where it's really interesting to look at the metaphysical cause of certain illnesses and diseases, because a lot of times it is certain fears or shadows or certain things that we think are bad and we shouldn't express, like anger, grief, that we want to swallow down, because we're like, no, we just want to focus on being happy at all times, so just want to focus on being positive. But those are actually, in the long run, are actually going to hurt us if we do not allow those emotions to flow through us. We don't have to dwell on them, but just allow them to flow through us.
Have you watched that Heal documentary that's on Netflix?
I haven't yet.
It came out a few weeks ago, or maybe, oh no, you know what? I think when I looked at it, I just watched it a month ago, but I think it came out at the end of 2017. But it's this... I love that I'm seeing this more and more, and it's probably because I'm accepting it more into my reality, so my reality is starting to reflect it. Dun dun dun, manifesting your reality. So basically it is a lot of people talking about how they have rectified and made better their chronic illnesses through naturopathic ways and holistic remedies. And it kind of goes through a lot of these different practices that people are able to heal themselves with. But a really fun aspect of it is bringing in the science, where they're able to really map and quantify a lot of the healing that's going on. And they use things like auditory waves, these like binaural... I don't want to get too deep into it. If you haven't seen it on Netflix, it's there. It's called Heal. And I feel like this can be one of those rifts that people have with spirituality, that they want to be very science-based. But we're really starting to be able to quantify a lot of these ailments within the body and find the ways to heal them naturally without pharmaceuticals.
Yes. Yeah, healing it from the subconscious part, because if we heal it just on the physical side, we're just healing like 12%, like from the conscious part. Or if we really just talk about matter, we're just healing 0.0001% of what we are. So yeah, by focusing really on that subconscious part, the hidden depths within ourselves, the shadows, that's when we can get really, really authentic and raw within ourselves. And that's, I always say, the deeper you dive, the higher you rise. Because the deeper that you jump down, it's almost like a trampoline, like when you really, really deeply go into it, and it bounces you back up even higher. And it's really fun, but it's also a practice that needs time. It needs time to develop it, like
so
everything.
Much time. Yeah, that's another thing that I really love to talk with people about, because we're in this age where everything is so instantly gratifying and everything is so instantaneously available that we just want to know the answers, and we want to know them right now, and we want to do the meditation, and we want our whole life to be changed from that 20-minute meditation. And this is the best part about spiritual practice for me, that I know that it's constantly unfolding, really, really like a vortex, where you can circle around and think that you've learned a lesson, but soon enough you're going to find yourself in a similar space with like a deeper depth and understanding and deeper knowledge and wisdom about that one thing that you've already sort of learned about yourself, but it's in a different scenario. And everything looks different because months and months and months of life has passed. But that's the vortex way that I like to look at it.
Yes.
Until you really are able to like get down to the epicenter of the vortex and transmute it into this entirely different level of like being. And then an entirely new vortex starts.
And I think that's one of the misconceptions too about spirituality, that it can be so easily manifested. That you manifest your dreams into reality in 1 week and 2 weeks, and just finding these, use the law of attraction to get this and this and this. And to certain degrees, yes, we can manifest. Obviously, it's a great tool to set intentions. That's one of the things that we do on new moons usually, and we're going to be talking about the moon phases in upcoming episodes. But at the same time, just as nature, when we plant a seed, we can't expect to have a full-blown tree the next morning. We have to allow it to grow.
And tend to it and nurture it.
Yeah,
because if we just go into it with intention and walk away, and then we want to blame the system because it hasn't given us exactly what we wanted, it's like, where is the sense in that, truly?
Yes.
Truly.
And that's right there, another misconception, that as spiritual people, we are lazy or we're not taking action, because that's another thing, like, oh, you just pray for the outcome and you just wait for things to come into your life.
No.
But it's both. Yes, praying, you're sending energy out, but then you also need to allow to have the space to listen to what is coming into your life. And by really focusing on those subtle moments, those synchronicities, those little numbers that keep showing up in your life, those little symbols, those signs, people recommending one certain book to you, or people saying certain things, triggers that come up. Those are the way that life communicates to us.
And the only way that you're going to understand it is if you get deep inside of yourself and really figure it out for yourself. Because some teachers can be great. They can point you in a good direction, but you're the only person that knows all the things that you have encountered in your being, in your life. And your universe is your universe. And you've got to devote the time to getting to know that universe.
Yes.
It's the greatest gift.
Yes, it truly is. And let's see what else we have in the misconception. If you're spiritual, you can't enjoy money. There you go. That's a big one.
Yeah, so this is something that Hannah and I have personally been healing, because really it's a wound.
Oh yeah,
really it's a wound.
Deep wound for like generations.
Yeah, for many. And also I think for women as well, for everybody, but also women, also men, also generations. You go ahead and speak on this first. I'm going to gather my story.
Yes, the money wound. So it's really a wound of self-worth that is being activated, and we both experienced that as soon as we started offering spiritual services. We both kind of came to like a little bit of a block within ourselves and within our community, where we noticed that there is like this little belief that is still stuck in the DNA in some ways, that money is the root of all evil and it's not spiritual, and if you're spiritual you do not care about money, or money is not important, and so you want to really subscribe to those vows of poverty. And it's just not truth. Like, it's not our truth anymore. We've got to the point where we're like, money is not bad or good. It really depends on what do you do with that tool. It's a tool. It's an energy exchange. it's something that you can use for the most amazing things. You can change the world with money. Sacred self-investment is one of the things to use money to change the world, by changing yourself, investing in your own development, and also giving to others, and really using money as your spiritual voice, giving it to conscious companies, giving it to conscious people who are creating, who are doing good for the world. And just imagine all the people that want the best for each other, which I feel like are most people on this planet, right? I mean, yeah, there are people that are very self-serving. It happens, like everything, there are exceptions, but I would say most of the people in this world really just want to be loved and, feel safe and, just have a good time. And just imagine if we really focus on allowing ourselves to receive the abundance that we all deserve, that is all within us, and then give that abundance to others and focus on building a new society that is based on conscious ways of treating the planet, of treating people, treating animals, on all levels. Imagine that world.
Yeah, and it's the world that all of us talk about wanting to see, and that is that age-old adage where we say, in order to see the world that you want to see, you must change yourself. I totally botched that, but you get the idea. You want to see something. You can't just be pointing fingers at other people saying, well, you make the change first. It's this thing about swallowing our pride and really saying, like, I'm ready to show up as the person that I want to see my community embodying. It can be a tough thing, especially if you're, that one and only person in your family and everyone thinks you're a freaking wackadoo for living your life the way that you do. I feel like everybody that we're going to attract to this podcast is going to be that person in their family. I mean, it's so much easier for us. We are. It's so much easier for us to do the easy stuff, to do the easy job, to keep quiet about the things that we actually want to express, to do Netflix all the time and chill. But, I don't know. I feel like the people that are going to be attracted to this podcast are going to be the change makers and the people that are envisioning that greater future and that want to explore the ways that they're able to show up more fully in their own lives, in their community, in their partnerships, just exploring. You don't have to be making great big old grandiose decisions or anything like that, but what we're here doing is opening up these conversations in hopes that somebody somewhere opens up a conversation that maybe won't be super eloquent or well thought out or anything like that, but just saying, like, man, I've been thinking about this concept lately and I don't really know who to talk to about it. Because a lot of times when you be that change maker and you step into the arena, when you don't know what the reaction is going to be, those are when miracles start happening. Those are when serious change can start just like flooding into your vortex, because you're doing something that you don't have to do from a loving place. That's what I think.
Yeah.
From a loving place. You don't know what the response is going to be, and you don't know if you're going to get alienated or ostracized or made fun of or whatever. But a lot of times you'll find that the person that you say that to is going to be like, you know what? Either I've never thought of it that way, I've always wanted to talk to somebody about this, or I feel so alone because I do want to talk to people about this, but I always think that no one's going to be interested.
Yes, and that's really one of the things we want to do with this podcast, to normalize what we say, normalize the magic, normalize the spiritual experiences, because we are all spiritual beings, and we, to some degree, there are times in our lives where we experience dreams, hunches, intuitive insights, premonitions. And I mean, I've had clients coming to me and say, I hear voices. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. But they were like, no, I'm mentally ill. I went to the doctor. I got medication for it. And I just want to, this is really part of what I feel so called to, is to help people understand, hey, it's okay. It's okay to be different, and it's okay to see and hear and feel something that you don't see. Because guess what? Our visible spectrum is 0.0035% of all that is. That's all that we can see. So to think of like, oh my God, I hear something, or I feel that something is there that you can't see, it doesn't make it not real just because you don't see it. And then realizing, wow, we all have the power to tune into different spaces. We don't have to tune into the self-serving voices, the voices that are trying to pull us down, that are trying to make us feel bad. We can tune into the voices that are of our higher selves, that are of beings, if that's in physical bodies, humans, and the community that we're surrounding ourselves with, or that are spiritual beings that are non-physical. But we can tune into those frequencies that are more lifting us up and are appreciating us and loving us unconditionally. And it's our choice. Ultimately, it's our choice. And we're going to be talking more about spiritual protection and all of that stuff in upcoming episodes. But yeah, just normalizing.
I was going to say, and that's how we feel about the money wound.
Yeah, we got a little bit off topic here. But I feel like that's also part of the spiritual misconception is that only a few people are spiritual. I think one of the misconceptions is that only a few people have a gift for psychic abilities.
Which is an interesting thing. When you use a word like psychic, that has a really big charge around it, for sure. But when you use something that's way more approachable, like gut feeling, everybody's like, yeah, I've had gut feelings. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like someone was just talking about you? Have you ever sat down next to somebody and felt like they are not the vibe? Yeah, we have these natural inclinations, and you can refer to it in whatever way makes you feel comfortable. This is another thing about spirituality that can turn people off, but for me, it sets me free because there are no confines, there are no set boundaries, and it's not that I just believe what I want to believe. It's that I'm not going to sit here super righteous and indignant and point my finger at somebody and be like, I know what it is and you don't know what it is.
And that leads us to our next misconception. Oh. If you're spiritual, you're also religious.
Dun, da, da. Dun, da, da. Perfect. Cool. So this is something that both of us have really close ties to. I grew up as a born-again Christian. Super religious household. I was the kid that had to burn my Pokemon cards because Christian radio said the black adhesive in the middle of the card was the devil, literal Satan. A bunch of neighborhood kids were riding their bikes when I was burning my cards, and everyone was like, what's going on there? They turned into my cul-de-sac and were like, what are you doing? Because I had a pretty impressive stack of cards. I was really good at Pokemon. And same thing with, like, I got grounded for an entire summer for trying to sneak the Spice World VHS tape into my house one summer. I came out of the shower one time when my friend Patrick bought me the 4th Harry Potter book in 7th grade. It had just come out, 1st edition. He got it for me for Christmas. And my mom was ripping out the pages and throwing them in the trash can, and I was grounded. Like, I had we weren't allowed to celebrate Halloween, nothing like that. Very, very strict religious household, and that's the not so fun part about the way I grew up. But the fun part about the way that I grew up was that I felt this really, really deep connection to spirit when I was a really young girl. Like, literally the first moments of my life. The house I was born in, we lived in till I was 3 years old, and I have so many memories from there because my parents used to have weekly Bible studies, And I would witness my parents with their arms around their friends, just weeping and sobbing, crying, laughing, praying. And I remember looking up at this group of adults and being like, man, I don't know what this whole thing is about, but I cannot wait to grow up and do this. Because I felt the passion, I felt the like authentic connection that, and I wanted it because it seemed so cool.
Yes.
And then, you know, come to hit puberty, and I'm like 14, 15, 16, growing up in the church and singing in my church and performing in my church and being a very active member of my church, and then very subtly starting to get these super judgmental, like ostracizing, shame building messages implanted into me, that something in my heart, it just didn't feel good. It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like this unconditionally loving being that we refer to as God would, you know, just sit there with these crossed arms looking down on all of us peons that he created and be like, and be like, y'all need to worship me. If not, you gon' burn. You know, it's like these messages did not sit well in my soul. So I went a good 10 years. It was actually 9 years that I went without. That's interesting because we believe that most things go in 9-year cycles, which we'll get into numerology a different time as well. But yeah, I went a good 9 years without any sort of spiritual connection, and those were the most purposeless and lacking in fulfillment years of my life. It felt very lost. You know, and now at 25 years old, 3.5 years ago, I just blossomed into this entirely different realm of spiritual beliefs that is legit all-inclusive, and it just feels so good in my spirit. And
you found the balance.
I found the balance. I really feel that way. Yeah.
And for me, it was really similar in a sense too. Like my parents were, Christian, and at the same time very science oriented, which I find like really interesting how that can coexist. But that's awesome. But in one side, it was the religion with all the rules and the boundaries, and I always was the one that asked questions, and it was not welcomed in church to ask questions. And I'm just like, why is that? Why do we believe that? Why is God he? Why is he male? What, you know, whenever in our world it's just one male person that gives birth to something. Usually, I would say in most cases, it is the woman that gives birth with the help of the man. But anyway, I asked all these questions. It was not welcomed, and then I got into being a really deep science lover for probably 1 year, where I was just really deeply into studying the brain and studying the chemistry and studying the physical scientific part of life. Got into atheism, and that was also one of the darkest times of my life, I have to say. Really denying my inner voice, denying my dreams, because I've been astro traveling since I'm a little kid, but I started denying all of that as being anything real. Really brushed it off as just some woo-woo stuff that's just in my fantasy and my brain makes up. And all these spiritual experiences that I have were nothing, and I got to that place of really, really dark depression, until my inner voice was like, you have to leave the space. It was just so loud. It was yelling at me. And that's when my spiritual journey started, which was 2011, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2012, just as the Mayan calendar ended. That was my time to also end my extremes from one religious to then scientific, and now in the middle, that is the spiritual part that really embraces both sides, that really embraces the metaphysical part, the quantum physics, and embraces the unconditional loving part from religion.
Yeah, such a fascinating thing, as you can see us going back into the roots of our being and really the way that we've come to be. And I think that especially in this day and age where we can keep ourselves so distracted from the moment that we wake up to, you know, step into the shoes of the roles that we fulfill in our lives, really self-reflection is not something that comes so naturally to us unless we really put aside the time. And to put aside the time regularly, we have to prioritize it. And in order to prioritize it, it has to have some deep meaning for us.
Mm-hmm.
And
only then we can learn the lesson, when we reflect on our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Just because by having the experience, we're not necessarily learning the lesson from it. We're really just learning it when we reflect on the experience, and then we can actually move above the pattern, and we don't have to stay in the same pattern, maybe attract the same kind of people into our life, attract the same kind of situations. And whenever that happens, and that still happens to us as well, it's not like, oh my God, we're focusing on the spiritual part and that's why we're perfect and we have only happy times. No, we go through challenges all the time.
Daily.
And it's fun. And it's also not always fun. It can, in the moment, it can be really frustrating as well. Retrospectively, it can be really fun because you're like, oh, that's the pattern. Oh, that's why I attracted that into my life, because there's an inner wound of mine that wants to be healed, or there's something coming up that wants to be noticed. And that is just so healing and so transforming to look at life from that perspective.
Like a schoolroom,
Yeah.
like a classroom, like a video game.
Like a game, yeah.
Like we're here in these physical bodies, walking this life, having these experiences to learn from them.
Yeah.
In our childhood, it provides us all of the parts that we are to look at and transmute and grow from in the rest of our life.
Oh yeah, I just want to talk about this real quick. In this ancient Mexican book of art that we have downstairs, and my daughter Emma loves to look through the pages, and there's one picture that just inspires me so much, because it's this house that they created, made with clay, and in the first level and upper level are the living people, and then on the lower level are the ones who have already crossed over, but they're all living in the same house. They're all with us at all times, and we can connect with them still, but it's just on a different level. And it's just like the video game. When right now we're plugged into the game, we don't necessarily see anyone else who's not playing the game, but as soon as we're outside of the game or unplug of it, we see all the other people that are around us, all our ancestors, our loved ones, everybody is here, because ultimately we are non-physical. Most of us is non-physical. And this physical reality that we think is reality is really just 0.00001% of what is real.
I want to touch on that ancestry bit that you just said, because I think it's really important, and I had never thought about our ancestral wounds or ancestral lineage until last summer, and it was a very foreign concept to me. And I want to try to break down as much as we can whenever it comes up, because I think it's important. So can you imagine whenever you start to become self-aware of yourself, and you start to think of the child that you are in your family dynamic, what your family dynamic looked like growing up, the wounds that are embedded into that family dynamic. For myself, I grew up in a very patriarchal household. And when I look at the maternal line of that, I see that in the family dynamic that my mother grew up in, this was also a piece of the family dynamic in that story. Because the people that we pair ourselves with is a conscious choice, or maybe not even always a conscious choice, an unconscious choice of what we are choosing to involve ourselves in, what we are choosing to commit ourselves to. And whenever we look at those family dynamics and the deep, like, subconscious messages that are constantly revolving inside of that dynamic and go back generation to generation to generation, you can see the thread. You can see the wound. Especially for me, it's in my maternal line, my mother's side of the family. And this is the way that, for me, I have become freed, liberated, empowered by saying, I am a circle breaker of this wound. It, like, gives me chills to say stuff like that, because it can end with me.
Yes.
It can end with me. I don't have to subscribe to this anymore.
Yes.
I don't have to give it to my daughter, my children to come. And these are the ways that you can literally, I think in spirituality sometimes too, people can think that we're very airy-fairy, up in the clouds, that we're not very tied to reality, and like nothing could be more real.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of spiritual people, the way that they seem so different from like normal society is just that they're able to tap into these unseen realms. Because it really, it's not, when we say unseen realms, it's not like we're talking about like some, you know, some deep cavern in, you know, like an actual place that we're like visiting, although it could be for some people, who knows. But really it is as grounded as you can get. And for me, opening up on misconceptions like this is what I feel a huge part of my work is in this life, because those misconceptions don't have to be. And if you have, there's a perfect word for everything, and there's a perfect way to describe absolutely everything in life. This is one of the beauty of words, and the love, utter love and devotion that I have to words, because there's always a perfect way to describe exactly what it is that you are trying to relay.
Yeah, there is and there isn't at the same time, because I feel like it comes down to definition as well. You know, just as we said, there are so many misconceptions, and it all really depends on what is the definition of spiritual.
But even then, you're able to let someone know where your perspective is and where it is that you're coming from.
Yes.
Because it's not going to be the same from person to person. But once again, words can come in as the lifeline to save you.
Yes. Yeah, and that's one of the things too, and we both, and we're going to be playing like devil's advocate throughout this podcast as well, because we love to do that with each other as well. And that's
a good friendship.
And it's a good friendship, because we just talked about that before, because really, if you have a good relationship, it's going to bring you blessings and triggers. That's the best relationship that you can have, really. Having blessings and triggers. You don't want to have just triggers and just little blessings. That's not necessarily a fun thing, although it can happen, and it might be super, super beneficial for your growth. Just, we were talking about this morning. We had relationships that were mostly triggers and less blessings. And those actually really got us to where we are now, because they really helped us to identify a lot of inner shadows and do the work around that part. So even those relationships are beautiful teachers. Really, everyone is a beautiful teacher. That's one of the things, that's another misconception. Like that there are only specific spiritual teachers that you have to subscribe to. No, you can learn from everybody.
Yeah,
literally.
Having a master guru, teacher, shaman shed some serious light on your situation is amazing, but also somebody in the grocery store that you interact with for 5 seconds can have the greatest impact on you.
Yes.
It really doesn't.
And you can have on them as well.
Yeah.
Just like saying little words, or
giving a smile.
Yeah, giving a smile. Or like this lady today at the registry, she was like counting the money because she couldn't pay for these bananas, and the bananas were just 69 cents a pound, and she was just like counting her money, and I was like, you know, I'm just gonna pay it for you. And she was just like, so thank you so much, I feel so blessed. And you can tell like how how impactful, and how like the divinity was like talking through her, like the divine was talking through her, and that I feel like is such a beautiful thing when we start noticing the divine, whatever we want to call it, but we start noticing that non-physical part within ourselves that is that unconditional love, that is that oneness, that is connecting us with this invisible thread. And we can find that in every single pair of eyes of every being, and even of the beings that don't have eyes.
And really it's again going back to that idea of it really is the world that all of us want to live in. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can just be hard to embody that person that we want to see, because we can be really weighed down with wounds, with hardship, with seeming confusion. Mm-hmm. And that is so real. Please, if you take one thing away from this podcast today, let it be that we acknowledge your truth. Mm-hmm. We acknowledge whatever it is that your reality looks like. We get it. Mm-hmm. We've been there. We lived in completely different worlds. Yeah.
Many times.
Yeah. And that is a big piece of my mission here too, is that knowing who I have been in the past, knowing how dark my world has been at times, mm-hmm. and how dark my habits and my behaviors have been at times, and just knowing how real that reality was, and how I literally could never see myself living as a different person or in a different way to some extent, and seeing where I'm at now. Mm-hmm. Everybody deserves this. Everybody deserves to know that they can really change what's going on in their realm.
Yes, that we are the co-creators of our life. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we're almost like going into the next misconception, or our last one that we want to touch on today. And it's about when you're spiritual, you have to practice yoga. And that's interesting, because yoga was, for both of us, was kind of the pathway to even becoming aware of that spiritual part within ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you want to share a little bit of what your story looked like with it?
Yeah, so for me, I started yoga in Germany, really just the asana yoga, like really the workout yoga, basically, the actual physical part of yoga. And then I ended up, when I came to America, I ended up doing it in California as well. And it just helped me to, for the first time in my life, to just be still. Like in the last moments when you go into meditation after you work out, go into meditation, and I was just still. And that was so hard for me. In the beginning, because I was someone who always needed to do something. I always needed to like work on something with my fingers. I always needed to have a to-do list, walk around, pace around. I could never just think about just relaxing and just being. That was so out of my scope. And yoga actually helped me with, after doing all these physical exercises, and then really just going into the space of meditation, which at first I didn't really go deeply into meditation, but just slowly becoming aware of like, wow, this really feels good. And I really want to start implementing that on a regular basis for my everyday life. And that's how my spiritual journey really started. I got away from it for a while and then I got back into it, and then
that's how it goes,
deeply go into it.
That's how it goes in seasons with every single thing in life. So mine's kind of a two-parter, but I guess I'll just talk about the second experience that really led me down this path that I'm still on today. So it's also whenever like miracles and synchronicity really started showing themselves. So in 2015, it was, numerologically, it was my year 7, which is a big year of truth. Like I said, we'll go into numerology in future episodes. But for a lot of people, it's a very challenging year. Oh, yeah. Because truth can be very challenging.
And it usually shifts everything in your life.
Like a very tower moment in the tarot, which we'll talk about in future episodes as well. But, so I had gotten a DUI that year. I got let go from this job that I thought was gonna be able to allow me to retire. I was a cocktail waitress at this super hot nightclub in Las Vegas. I thought I was just living the dream, and at the beginning of the year it all started kind of crumbling around me, and I found myself just in shambles, not knowing anything about what my life was about. I felt completely out of touch with who I was. I remember one night getting home from Omnia, as the nightclub that I was cocktailing at, and I'm wearing the bombshell push-up bra from Victoria's Secrets with extra massive pads inside of the already massive bra, and I have a face full of caked on makeup, and I'm in my 6-inch heels just looking like some alien version of myself, and looking in the mirror and being like, who is that? Who are you? I don't know you. I don't know if I love you. I don't know if I respect you. I just don't know anything about you. And it was a really low point, because from the outside it seemed like I had everything that anybody ever wanted. I had just had a meeting at the Lexus dealership. I was about to get a brand new Lexus. Like, everything was amazing from the outside, but inside I felt like a shell of a person. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying this is the experience of any other cocktail server in Las Vegas. Heavens no. But it was my truth. I didn't fit in that industry. And I found myself with a massed savings account, and my yoga teacher was driving me to my yoga classes, and I wasn't able to drive myself because I had gotten a DUI. And on the way to the yoga studio one time, she said, you know, I really think that you have a beautiful practice. You should consider coming to this teacher training that I'm going to be going to in a few weeks with a teacher, Annie Carpenter, Annie Carpenter, for anybody that's in the yoga world, she is known as a master teacher. She's referred to as the teacher's teacher because a lot of yoga teachers train with her. And, you know, immediately I was like, no, I could never imagine myself teaching. My self-worth was very, very low, confidence very low. And I found myself committing to it for the first time in my life, committing to something. Thanks to my beloved, who is now my husband. He said, well, you have to go. You have no idea what's going on with your life right now. You better get out of here. And it was in Venice, California. And right before we left for the yoga teacher training, my girlfriend that I was going to go with was like, oh, I can't go anymore, but you're going to go with my other girlfriend, Ashley. And I had severe social anxiety, and I told myself, no way. I was hardly able to commit to going with this girl, and I hardly like her enough to go on a trip. I'm for sure not going to get along with this other girl that I've never met. And then I get in the car with this girl, and her name is Ash, of the Yoga Couple. I know probably a lot of you follow the Yoga Couple. They have a podcast as well called The Inner Work, and Ash and Matt, her husband, have a book called The Inner Work coming out here soon. She's a brilliant, brilliant teacher, and she was just talking about manifesting abundance and how you're a co-creator of your own reality, and you know, she was full of love and light, and I just honestly thought that she was so dumb and so silly. I was like, man, this chick is out of it. And I was so judgmental. I would like have my arms crossed all the time. And, you know, we went through a month of living together where I was just like, okay, if you want to believe that, that's cool. But at the same time, I was witnessing her manifesting everything she was talking about. She would say these things like, oh, I really want to get the new iPhone 8. Oh, I really want to get a new laptop. All these things that she was like, I'm going to manifest this. And I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. But then a few weeks later, sure enough, it was like these blessings would just come, and some seemingly random happenstance would happen, and she would be blessed with this thing that she said that she wanted. So then it started to turn into, whatever she's on, I want some of it too. And this was an equally profound experience in awakening me to alternate realities.
Yes.
To being able to witness somebody who literally lives on another planet, seemingly.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of things happened with my yoga teacher as well. Her, you know, shedding light on what an anxiety-driven perfectionist I was, and I had never seen those things about myself before. And whenever I did witness those things for the first time, it was very, very profound. And it, like I said at the beginning, got me on a tireless track of self-discovery and expansion. And now it's my greatest joy to talk with other people about.
Yes. Yeah. And so in the misconception, do we think that you need to practice asana yoga?
No, absolutely not. If you
not.
see, this is another misconception about yoga. So many people think of yoga asana as yoga, but really yoga has 7 branches to it. Just one type of yoga has 7 branches to it. Then there's Bhakti yoga, Raja yoga, so many different lineages of yoga as well. And only one of the limbs in the tree of yoga is the asana. And even in ancient sacred texts, namely the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, only one of those parables, it's a book of parables of deep wisdom, only one of those parables mentions anything about physical exertion, which are the physical postures of asana. And so much of yoga and its principles can be attained through things like mindfulness, things like nonviolence, of cleanliness, of unconditional love toward others, of just connecting yourself to your roots, your ground. Mm-hmm. Basic things that whenever you decide that you want to become, a more mindful or self-aware being, your days just kind of start to shift, where you start to embody those self-inquiry aspects of really what yoga is about. Witnessing yourself, witnessing what happens in the moments between the breath.
Yes. And the word yoga is derived from the Sanskrit yud, meaning, I don't know how to pronounce that, yud? Yeah,
meaning to join or yoke. Yoke is what we understand.
And unite. Mm-hmm. Unity. And so it's so much more than just a physical part. So we're inviting all of you to look deeper into the different parts of yoga, because for us personally, both the yoga asana has both helped us to come onto this journey of self-discovery and self-exploration, but it is not a necessity. Mm-mm. You do not need that in order to be spiritual, because ultimately you are already spiritual. Mm-hmm. Just the way you're doing it.
And I was going to add this when you were talking about the physical postures earlier, is that there's some parable or some piece of yogic wisdom that says in ages, I don't remember what it is, like 12 to 60 or something is the time that you do asana, and that's the yoga that you practice. And 60 and after is when you're able to sit in meditation and contemplate. And you don't have to do the preliminary yoga asana to tire the body, because really that's what yoga is really good for. It's for grounding ourselves into our body, for slowing things down, for connecting with the breath, and for just being, for slowing ourselves down and tiring ourselves so that we may prepare ourselves for the deeper contemplation, which we can find in meditation as well.
Yes, and it all comes down to the breath again. The breath that is the root word of spirituality.
Perfect. What a full circle.
What a full circle. Here we go.
So even though we've gotten off on some tangents, we're gonna it's an interesting thing. I want to say we're going to try to be better about that in the future, but at the same time, we really enjoy the ways that we can kind of flow off topic sometimes, because all of it's relevant information.
Oh yeah, and just as we said in the first episode, we in the intro, we want to combine the masculine and feminine. We want to combine the intellect and the intuition, and the intellectual part is having the guideline, but the intuition is leading us wherever we need to flow between the lines. And we're going to be adding the different misconceptions that we've been touching on throughout the time, because way more came up than we thought we're going to be talking about. And I feel like all of them were relevant, and I hope that you all got something from this podcast. And let us know what you thought. Let us know your comments. We're super excited
Yeah, if you want to, if you feel that this podcast is resonating for you and you want to give it a rating, if you want to leave us a comment, if you want to send us an email for future episode ideas or topics or questions that you have, you can email us at sacredsistergathering@gmail.com. And you want to talk about what we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks?
Yeah, so our next episode is going to be about what do we mean by masculine and feminine energies. We've brought them up a few times in this episode and in the intro, and we really want to be clearing up any misconceptions about that, what it is really about, and just go deeper into it, how they show up in our lives.
And that will lay down foundation for the elements, which we'll be talking about in the following episodes, going through fire, earth, air, water, and ether, how they present themselves to each and every one of us in our daily lives, and the ways that their energies and their personas are deeply, deeply embedded within our DNA on a cellular level, our connection to the elements.
And how we can actually use them as tools to help ourselves to get grounded or to get more aware in whatever way we want.
Thank you so much. What a brilliant first episode. We are so grateful that you decided to take time out of your day to sit with two women that are curious about opening up with self-exploration and self-discovery, and who just want to be meeting people that are just as curious as we are.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and we're going to talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
You can look forward to new episodes about every 2 weeks from us.
Yes.
See you.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.